This episode of the TRM podcast is brought to you by TRM, trusted IT solutions for today's business challenges. In today's episode, our host and TRM president, Norman Carr, sits down with Scott Wright, CEO of ClickArmor, which is a new and innovative cybersecurity awareness training solution that uses gamification to engage and arm employees with skills to defend against cyber attacks. Enjoy the show.
Good day, my name is Norman Carr. I'm the president of TRM Technologies. I'm pleased to have with us today Mr. Scott Wright, president of ClickArmor, an organization that we deal with exclusively in the delivery of social engineering and security awareness training. And so without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Scott. We're here today to talk about phishing schemes and such, and other training that's become necessary, I'm afraid, given that the current cyber concerns and also because of the pandemic. Scott, over to you.
Yeah, hi Norman. Great to see you today. It's an interesting time for sure. I think we're always a little bit surprised at how bad things can get, and they just seem to keep getting worse, right? So the problem that I'm seeing these days from phishing is that the global cybercrime rate is escalating. I think they're predicting $6 trillion in global cybercrime losses by 2021. And to put that into context, the entire enterprise IT budget globally in that same year is $4 trillion. So it's going to be more in cybercrime, more profitable to be in cybercrime than in enterprise IT. So that's one of the scary things. But we're also learning that from a security awareness point of view, we have a lot of difficulty getting people to understand what to do to defend themselves. We know that attackers are focusing on people because they think that people are the weakest link, and they are finding ways to get around all of the millions of dollars worth of network security and computer security, software security, just to get to the people and have them make poor decisions or click on things that give them access to the things that we don't want them to have. So it's a really tough time these days for businesses, especially small businesses. We know that 60% of small businesses that have a security breach go under within 6 months. So that's a pretty startling revelation. And that's something that I've basically focused on for the last 10 years is the security awareness problem, the weakness in human ability to make good security decisions.
Scott, you've given us some size and scope. It's a significant number. What are businesses most concerned about in terms of areas to address first, and where's your current focus?
Yeah, so I mean, businesses from the pointy end of the stick, right, where it's all happening is things like ransomware, right? When you hear news stories about ransomware and scams, businesses being scammed out of millions of dollars, which with what seem like simple tactics by the attackers. So these kinds of things are what keep CEOs up at night and leaders in government, trying to figure out how you get people to stop clicking on things, or how to get them to stop complying with requests without authenticating them. And those things are what lead to these ransomware incidents where businesses are completely shut down. All of their systems are locked up unless the company or organization pays the ransom. And sometimes you see them not paying the ransom, and that's probably a good thing on principle. It's like not paying a ransom for a kidnapping. But in the end, even if you do pay the ransom, you're not guaranteed to get all your data back. I think there's actually a significant percentage, around 20%, have reported that even after they paid the ransom, they didn't get all their data back, which is a big problem. The other thing is, if you actually don't pay the ransom, the fact that they had access to your data in the first place means they could have and probably did extract it. And it gives them a plausible second wave of attacks, which I call double dipping. And basically it means that the attacker will come back and say, well, you don't want to pay the ransom, eh? Well, I'm going to expose all this personal data and sensitive data that I got from your systems anyway, unless you pay. So that's another reason why you might want to pay. So it's really just such a bad situation in terms of impact that the only real response is to try to prevent it from happening in the first place. And for that, you really need to address the awareness problem and the people that are clicking on these kinds of phishing links, spear phishing, et cetera. And the kinds of solutions that businesses are using right now are typically developed for compliance purposes to address things like HIPAA and GDPR, which are all very valid reasons to have a program. But what they don't always do is address the risks and the real behavior that we're trying to change by having a program in place. And so if people can't actually practice and see the kinds of things in real life that they're going to see sometime in the future, then it's very hard for them to be able to react properly when they do see it. And that's really where we've been focusing on addressing that kind of a gap in the security awareness model with ClickArmor.
Okay. So, Scott, what's ClickArmor doing to sort of address this? I know we've been working together for a few years now, and I know we've done some custom training. Can you get into the details? Can you give us some specifics?
Yeah, for sure. So as you mentioned, we've worked together for a while on security awareness programs for different organizations. And I've been doing it for about 10 years, training security awareness. And what I've learned is every business has a different risk environment. They have different terminology. They have different workflows. And we learned that as a result, unless you tailor the content to the specific situation that people are in, they won't necessarily be able to even understand what you're saying to them. And if they're not engaging and they're not understanding, they're not going to be able to defend. And so a few years ago, the reason we created ClickArmor was to change that whole model and say, we need to get people engaged, first of all, to be able to understand what we're giving to them. We can put a page of text or a video in front of them, but if they're not paying attention, they're not going to learn, they're not going to be able to defend. So what we have created with ClickArmor is a gamified, integrated platform and methodology that allows us to deploy in the same self-paced SaaS model that you would see in traditional security awareness training. But because we use a number of proven gamification techniques, what I mean by that is intrinsic and extrinsic rewards for people to take little steps that will get them further along and show them progress and show them that they are getting better and improve their confidence. So the fact that we're using these proven techniques that nobody else in the industry has used is really exciting and fun, because people are giving us amazing feedback on how it works. What we haven't really seen in any significant way is the solutions out there right now arming employees with this kind of gamification. Sometimes you'll see vendors say, yeah, we've got games as well, we're gamified, but what they're not doing is integrating all of the gamified learning techniques together into a single course, for example, and focusing on gamification as a way to repeat and exercise people's skills, and then to be able to assess them in a real sort of simulated environment. So when we do that, we gather the data from the first time somebody plays to the second, to the third, and we can see the trend. We can therefore say how much knowledge retention they've actually achieved by the end of the program. And so with the simulations and the data that we have, we actually provide some really good assurance data for management, which they never had before in providing a security awareness training to their employees.
Scott, are you getting feedback from your customers? Are you seeing evidence that the training's working?
Yeah, it's really fun actually, because a number of our early customers have had their employees have sent me emails directly just saying, I just wanted to let you know, we just finished the training. I found it a lot of fun, but I also learned something, which is obviously what we're after in the first place. But it's just such a fun sort of, you can tell in their voice or the tone of what they wrote, that they're really excited about it. They're saying, a bunch of us are competing together within the leaderboard, and then we saw, that the president of the company is getting up on the leaderboard, so we all went back in and redid some of the courses to improve our scores and push them down on the leaderboard. So it's that kind of like real life experience that people can't even imagine ahead of time how it's going to impact the culture and their abilities. We also have other employees who've said that they've never had training or any kind of awareness training where they found it that they would go and talk to their coworkers about how difficult it was or how they did on the program. And they said, basically, I've forgotten everything about any of the other awareness training I've ever taken, but this one really resonates. They've told people that they'll be in a meeting and someone say, well, I got this email, I'm not sure if it's right. And they'll say, didn't you take the ClickArmor training? you should have remembered that. You got to take it again. So the feedback that we're getting from employees in particular is really good. And in managers, we're getting people saying, I thought I knew this stuff, but I was actually a little bit overconfident and I didn't do as well as I thought I would. So it kind of brings people down to earth. But everybody really seems to be finding it useful, at least from the point of view of as an experience and developing their confidence in doing security defense.
The training you're providing, is it all clients need? Is it augmenting the other training they're seeing as well? Where do you see this fitting?
Yeah, good question. So the traditional security awareness training has typically looked at, the types of guidance that people have or that businesses have in their policies. Typically, you've got an acceptable use policy. You'll have, guidance on passwords or how to avoid viruses or ransomware. But what we are not trying to do is teach everybody everything right now. We're focusing on the high risk areas where we really need people to change behavior. Gamification, as you can imagine, is a little more complex than just putting a screen of text in front of people and hoping they read it and understand it. And because of that, it will take a little while for us to build up the entire library of content that you might want to have in a full security awareness program. But if we can address 80% of the problems right now with a couple of courses on phishing and social engineering, and soon to be coming acceptable use policies and passwords and mobile. Those things are the top things that we need people to understand. So we see ClickArmor as more of a complement to your compliance-based training to really close the gap as far as risk management goes.
Scott, we've had conversations in the past, and I know you've mentioned that customers of organizations can be equally vulnerable. What are you doing to sort of prevent that sort of additional breach, I guess?
Yeah, it's an interesting problem that I hadn't really thought of that much until fairly recently. I mean, every business obviously has customers, but when you have large organizations, especially government and other highly trusted organizations, banks, for example, you have a large customer base, and the attackers would love to be able to get in between them and have payments go to them instead of to one of the two partners in the relationship. And so we're seeing a lot of cases of things like phishing and even texting that is impersonating the trusted organization like the government or larger organizations and saying, here's where you make your payment, or here's where I would like my refund check deposited. These are all things that can actually be targeting the clients of an organization. And that's not only bad financially, but it's certainly not good with the organization in terms of their reputation to have their client base targeted and scammed. So we're actually getting opportunities now to talk to organizations about using ClickArmor as a way of educating their client base to make sure they're aware of the risks from scams, because the organization really has no way to see those attacks happening against their clients. So it's a really interesting way of applying ClickArmor, not only internally for employees, but externally to your clients.
Scott, thanks for this. It's been good. Any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to wrap up with?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to reiterate, the fact that things are really not getting any better, at least on the defensive side, and on the or on the attacker's side. As I said, we're seeing a huge increase in attacks to the $6 trillion global cybercrime number, and that was even before the pandemic. We've seen a 600% increase in phishing attacks alone just since the beginning of the pandemic, and almost everybody I talk to these days says they've seen a surge. And so it's really getting a lot worse in the threat area. And if we don't increase the ability of employees to defend against these kinds of threats in a different way than we were doing before, then we're not going to get any better at it. And the gap is just going to get wider. So we see ClickArmor as really the only solution that really engages employees to defend themselves against any kind of attack that you can simulate, and to build some kind of immunity within the teams to those cyber attacks. Along the way, what we've offered in the last month is a new program called Can I Be Phished, which is really a free online assessment that allows businesses or individuals actually to come and just do a 3-minute game and see how vulnerable they might be to phishing attacks that would simulate any kind of COVID-19 exploit. So it could be emails from your help desk or from your HR department, on your overtime pay schedules and things like that. Any kind of attack that an attacker might launch at individuals working from home, this can really help people understand how vulnerable they are. And it's free, and it's at canibephished.com. And we also have a corporate version of this, which is also free, and it will allow us to gather information about the vulnerability of an entire team anonymously and report it back to you and show you how many people got them all right, how many people got 1 out of 10 wrong, etc. And it gives you literally a profile of how vulnerable your team is to phishing attacks. So we're really excited to be able to offer these sort of free trial programs just to show people quickly how we can bring new value to your business.
Scott, thanks for this today. It's very good. For you clients watching this, if you're trying to get a hold of Scott, feel free to reach out to TRM Technologies. You'll find the contact information attached, the email, or feel free to reach out to Scott directly. We work together. So thank you very much, and have a good day. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Norm.